Okay, so everybody arranged themselves where they were born on the earth, and that was kind of fun. You got to find, commonality and, where there might be some separation. And I just encourage you as you go through this program to rely on each other, learn from each other. We all have something that we're bringing to this equation, so really encourage you to do that as much as you can. So for a little minute, I'm gonna do some lecture. Oh no, actually, Lauren is up next.
Okay, thank you. So I wanted to be able to kind of give you an outline of the program. I've done this with many of you individually, but not everyone. So basically what I wanted to do was to go over how the program runs, and as most of you are aware, everybody's aware, this is a weekend type program. This is basically designed for professionals. That we initially designed it so professionals could come in from out of town for a whole weekend. We've had people from New York, from California, from Virginia Beach, from Richmond that come in and they spend the night here and they take 2 days of classes and then they go back home. So it's a different rhythm of going to school than those of you that have been in our landscape design program, or those of you that are probably in the urban planning program, where you're coming in one night a week and you have an assignment that might be a cumulative assignment over a semester, but you might have quizzes or lectures or something on a regular basis. I think CJ has been very clear, and I want to make sure that everybody's very clear, that a lot of the curriculum is self-taught and is you need to do work while in between your face-to-face portions of your class, all right? So in this particular This Introduction to Sustainable Design, we actually consider this a face-to-face class because you have 2 full weekends of 2 full days of interaction with your professor. The next class, which is Ecology of the Built Environment, is what we call an online course. So you participate online, and the way those courses are built is that you have unit readings or lectures that you listen to online, and then assignments, and you have to participate online through the discussion portion of Blackboard, and then you will meet once, or I think it's 1 or 2 days, 1 weekend, with Ecology of the Built Environment, and then from there you have another series of units. You have 4 units of learning, but you only are interacting face-to-face for 1 small period of time, all right? We've had a little problem in the last 2 years with folks kind of thinking, not quite recognizing when the online classes come on, and that you have to jump on and be a part of it. You all have already registered for Ecology of the Built Environment, so you'll get an email from the professors, but I've also given you a calendar here that really outlines it quite clearly. And so you can see, take a look at that. So you can see on here that the 14th, 15th, that's today and tomorrow, and then the next time you're going to be meeting with CJ is on the 4th and the 5th of February. But you'll have assignments to do between now and the 4th or 5th. And every course has a reading period that starts before you actually meet face-to-face. And again, I remind you to pay attention to that, because in the past we've had some students that don't quite capture that information, but so you'll always have a reading period, and reading period can mean that, as in with CJ's class, she's asking you to read 1 or 2 books, or she's asking you to read some articles. Sometimes in the studio-based classes, you actually have to go out, measure a site, if you're a landscape designer or somebody that's in the design field, or do particular readings, or do an assignment, like do a SWOT analysis of a particular area, if you're familiar with that from a planning perspective, prior to coming to the first face-to-face class. All right? So in looking at the calendar, and then just to forewarn, everybody that signs up for native plant courses, and Adele, everybody has pretty much from this cohort, correct? Signed up for the native plants courses? Okay. native plants courses are almost entirely from 9 in the morning till 5 in the afternoon taught out in the field. So that means you'll meet someplace, you will need to be wearing rain gear and boots and warm clothing, etc., and you will be walking around in the environment outdoors looking at plant communities and being able to identify plant communities. So those of you that have taken like Ray's plants courses, it's like that on steroids, because you're not out there for 2 hours, you're out there for like 6 or 7 hours, okay? So, but it's one of our big, you know, our students love that experience of being out, and we have 2 phenomenal experts, you know, botanists who are also really knowledgeable about plant communities and ecosystems and really knowledgeable about wildlife and wildlife habitat and the interaction between wildlife and native plants. So it's not like, just for those of you who've been landscape design, it's not like this is a dogwood and this is a red twig dogwood and this is a, you know, ground cover dogwood. It's not like that. This is looking out there and looking at, okay, we're in an oak beech hickory forest, and this has these sorts of associations, and there's, the reason we know that is because there's a particular kind of bedrock here. So it starts from literally the bedrock up. So it's land, so, you know, it's very in-depth and it's different than any other plants course you've ever had, okay? So if you're looking at the calendar, you can see in the blue, those are your actual meeting dates. The so-called light blue list is they can look at February 21st. That's when your final project is due. So the light blue didn't show up that well in this calendar, but those are when the project's due. Anything that's in orange is the online course section. So you can see that the online course technically starts on February 27th and runs through, and it says week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so that's your online course, and you have that one meeting the weekend of March 4th and 5th. Well, you'll be coming in for that course to do a face-to-face session. And then starting essentially April 10th or April 9th, you start a reading period for native plants, okay? And native plants, it's a little hard to read here, but native plants actually meets, I believe, on the 28th, 29th, and 30th. This is a change from the previous draft form of this calendar. So if you put down the dates, go back and redo these dates. One of our instructors is presenting at a fairly important conference the weekend that we had said. Well, an important conference, so much so that we needed to change dates. So that's a date change. And then the red, which you see later on in here, denotes when we have field trips set aside, okay? So the red markers are when field trips are set aside. And you'll notice that if you look over at semester 2, those classes are actually more or less every other Saturday, because that's the tools class, that's a stormwater management class. And how do you say your name again? Malaya? Malaya. Okay, Malaya. Malaya, who may be familiar with this because of her previous training and background, it might be a cakewalk for, but for some folks, what we found with the stormwater management course is that we taught all day Saturday, all day Sunday, a lot of like calculations and formulas and such and such and so to deal with sizing stormwater management facilities. About 4 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, the shutters began to slowly shut in our students' eyes, and by about 11 o'clock on Sunday, they started to slow down as well. So we've spaced that out so it's like every other Saturday, so that there's time to kind of digest the information. Okay, so you can go through this and kind of look at it and think a little bit about it. There are classes that are more studio classes. Studio classes kind of start with tools, but methods is definitely a class. So just to give you a brief overview of each course, Intro to Sustainable Design is CJ's class. You've already been introduced to. Ecology of the Built Environment is essentially looking at what are ecosystems that are functioning ecosystems, or how can you work to get functioning ecosystems in urban and suburban settings. So traditionally, we've all thought of as ecology being way out there in the woods or way out there in the Chesapeake Bay wetland areas, but there's a lot of, how does ecology function in our built environments, and how how can our practices make those things actually function well and or better. And so they give you the baseline of ecology, you know, what is ecology and the baseline of ecology. And during that time, you're also going to be choosing a watershed area that you're going to study over the course of the program. And you'll have your watershed area approved by the instructors of that class. And then from there, you know, so you're going to learn about what sort of things that can actually be applied in your practice, whatever your practice is, to improve ecological function. Native plants, I already described that course. We have 2 courses of it. Essentially, we broke that course up into 2 parts so that you could see different plant communities over time. And what does it look like in the spring? What does it look like in the late summer, fall? Our plant communities look really different over those 2 times, and different. So like, you're not going to see spring ephemerals if you're only walking around in the fall. So we have a spring ephemerals and kind of like a late fall, late summer, early fall time, so you can go out and really see like our, you know, our native grasses and their full glory in those communities, all right? Tools for sustainable design, I just alluded to it. It's stormwater management is really what that course is, but we also go over the basics. We start the basics of soils, and we go over, we begin to start talking about tree preservation and how do you do tree preservation practices when you're talking about stormwater management facilities, because those 2 things are oftentimes conflicting. Then sustainable design methods. So you have native plants 2 after tools, that's your first course in the fall. As I said, late summer, early fall. And then sustainable design methods really is a studio class. I co-teach that with Barb Neal. That's a course on designing, largely it's designing with native plants. How do you think about design as a function of creating ecosystem services? And it's actually a studio class, so you're going to have a project that you need to go out, do the site analysis on. I talk a little bit more about how site analysis is different through the lens of sustainability. And then we actually do designs in that course, and you turn in like a final project. For planners, we'll probably very likely bring in an adjunct planning professor to work with you on doing a feasibility study for either a park or community or something of that nature, in terms of and what we've done in the past with things like how can this park or this school work in conjunction with DC's sustainability plan and greening DC plans, and how can they actually implement it in this physical area, okay? Sustenance in the Landscape is also an online course. That course is basically urban agriculture. What are the different, you know, what is permaculture? How do you apply permaculture in city setting? What is a food forest? What is what are the various kinds of food systems? What is a food desert? So those of you all in planners probably have had some base courses that are somewhat similar, but this again is a little bit more design oriented and more project specific. So you'll do an analysis of your watershed about how much of available fresh food is available in your watershed, your sub-watershed. What is some of the practices that can happen in your watershed that are not currently happening? Do they have farmers markets? Do they have community gardens, that sort of thing? And then the last semester, which is a 4th semester, you have ecological restoration, which is an online course. So that's everything from invasive plant management control to how do you really put in your designs, implant in your designs, future ecosystem services that are applicable in that. So when you're looking at restoration, what does that actually mean? So it's one thing to remove all the bad plants that are invading our forests, but what do you need to put in its place? And Dr. Sylvan Kaufman co-teaches ecology of the built environment, and then she teaches ecological restoration, and she basically wrote the book on invasive plants, literally. She was a curator at the Atkins Arboretum. She's, you know, the best in the field for that area. And then the sustainable design shred is essentially like a thesis course. Again, that's generally a design design course where you're taking a project and you're bringing it to its full fruition. And I co-teach that with Joan Honeyman, right? Who you guys know very well. And so that is, does anybody have, right off the top of their head, any questions about this? Yes.
I just have a logistics question about the online courses. I'm not clear if they're asynchronous or if I need to be holding time on my calendar for these days that are marked in light orange.
No, so the information is going to be up on Blackboard, okay? And then you get to look at the lectures or do the readings or participate in the discussions on your own time frame.
Okay.
So you do not, there's no like live webinars. There's
Okay.
no moments where you have to directly interact with anybody else. What will happen is you'll participate largely on Blackboard on your own schedule, your own time. Usually, I think most of the professors set it up so, you know, you have Unit 1 assignment and readings, etc., and that needs to be completed within that first week. And the second Unit 2 needs to be completed, you know, read and responded to in the second week, you know, so that it is mapped out, but it's totally your own to control your own schedule in regards to that. Do you want to say anything else about that, Adele, that I might be missing, or do you feel like that answered the question?
No, I think you answered the question. So it's asynchronous, but it is very well paced in weekly units for the most part. I wanted to add one more note on scheduling. When you register for your course, the dates that will show up on the school registration system include those reading periods. So you'll see a course that starts, you know, that spans 2 months, but in fact there are 2 weekends that you're meeting face to face. But our students have asked us in the past to include those reading periods so that people can schedule their time. So you may find it confusing to see a course spanning 2 or 3 months, but then there's only certain dates that you meet. But we usually include those dates in the comments section. So not to confuse you, but to help you plan your time.
And this document I just gave you is the master document for
Yes.
schedule. So.
Are you going to reset, are you going to?
Yeah, I can send this electronically.
Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
thank you.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I had the same online question, which has been answered, thank you. And I think part of what confused me is there a distinction between the online classes executed in March and in October? Because in March, it just has the Mondays in pink, and in October, it's the whole week.
So
Are they really the same?
they're really the same,
Okay.
and yes, they're
Okay.
really the same, and I don't know why they colored out. They came out differently that. Having said that, one thing that's not on this schedule is that we're planning a trip to the Highline as a cohort. So both this cohort and the last cohort will be going up to the Highline. It usually is a one-day trip. We start off very, very early here in a bus. We go up to the Highline, up to New York. We go visit the Highline, and then we also usually visit 1 or 2 other what we think exceptional. You know, sometimes we've had Darren Morrison, who's kind of like the grandfather of this particular movement of sustainable landscapes. He will take us through the New York Botanical Gardens that he's designed, and the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens, the meadow that he's designed up there. We've also, on occasion, gone to, one year we went to what was like a pop-up urban farm that produced all the vegetables for a restaurant. So everything was in milk crates, and the reason we went to go visit that is because we were working with Catholic University and American University and doing the solar decathlon. We were trying to figure out how to do movable, transportable vegetable gardening, and there was a farm, an urban farm that had created a system up there that we wanted to visit and document, and as I was saying, it was very, very productive. And it was the sort of thing that is perfect, is that it was an empty lot waiting to be developed, and it was sitting on hold for 2 or 3 years so the farmers could build everything in these milk crates, and then when that lot was no longer available to them because they're actually going to build it, they could then move the milk crates to another lot. Or one time, I think Superstorm Sandy came through and they were able to dismantle the entire vegetable garden, take it all into the basement of the restaurant, and then bring it back out after Superstorm Sandy. So we try and look for what are innovative places to go look at. And the big portion is the Highline because of its success story. It's not necessarily a sustainable garden by any stretch of imagination. It had a huge amount of resource input to make it an ongoing place for everybody to go visit. But just its story in and of itself about how it's changed the real estate, the market, caused this huge infusion of development in a relatively dead space within New York City, and really brought New Yorkers and a huge amount of tourists to an outdoor garden space in New York is just something to be in awe of. And so we are going to choose those dates and put out a doodle poll or something to see how everybody can do that.
Around when will that trip be?
It's going to be probably around the mid part of May. Okay, sometime in May.
And it'll be on a weekend, do you think, or?
I hesitate to answer that question directly because the second place that we go visit, sometimes whatever that second place is, we haven't chosen it yet. Sometimes they're open on Saturdays, Sundays, or Mondays. So we have to also be aware of the fact that you don't want to go to the Highline when there's so many people on the Highline you can hardly move through it, and so we try and be sensitive to that. So we will give you ample time beforehand. If it's like on a Monday, we will give you ample time to consider how that might affect your personal work schedule. Okay. One other quick thing is that there is a phenomenal conference coming up next week called New Directions in American Landscape. It's NDAL. It's put on by Larry Weiner. It's in Bluemont, Pennsylvania, I believe. Bluebell, Pennsylvania. If you have the capacity, take a look at it online. It is by far the highest recommended conference that I ever suggest to students because it's academic and practical at the exact same time. And Larry Weiner is a pioneer in our field. He single-handedly has brought meadow restoration to the forefront the same way that Omi van Sweden totally changed the vernacular of what is an American landscape within 5 to 7 years. Larry Weiner has brought to the forefront the idea that meadows are things that you can install and have longevity and beauty and are effective ecosystems to put in. He worked with some of our alums to do Dumbarton Park's Oak Conservancy. He's worked with some of our alums to do Wood End Audubon Natural Society. He has worked with some of our current students to implement that at the Tregaron Conservancy, which is in the mid part of DC, in terms of putting in meadows where there were not functioning meadows. There were just weeds beforehand. And I use that term deliberately. So I would recommend that if you can go, do go. And there will be a huge GW contingent there. That's actually this coming week, like Wednesday through, I think it's Wednesday through Friday. Maybe it's Thursday, Friday. Most people are going up Wednesday night, the night before. And then lastly, thank you, CJ, pointed out, we are very, very pleased and feel very proud of the fact that we actually use real utensils and real plates and real cups. And all of that back there is a part of our effort to sustain you through the day, provide you with sustenance, get you rebooted and refueled during the day, because you won't go through all that in the morning. It will be available to you all day. But in return, we ask that you as students really take charge. Don't leave this at all on your instructor's shoulders or on Karen's shoulders at the end of the day or towards the day's closing. Take responsibility. Ask, where can I put these things? There's a faculty lounge kitchen over there. That's where those things are stored. People take stuff over there, put them in the refrigerator, wash the dishes, put them in the dish rack, and all of that. And because that's the flip side of being able to do that. And we are unique in definitely in this entire floor of the building, all CPS, that we're actually providing that. And we get a little bit of flack when our facilities folks feel like we have left dirty dishes for them to do. They very, very, very much prefer the paper plates. And so we feel like we can show them how to do it and do it right. So join us in making that a successful endeavor overall, okay? And you're always welcome to get up and take a leg stretch, go to the bathroom. We have 2 bathrooms on the floor. We have fresh water in the back corner over there. The urban planning students, the landscape design the landscape design students can show you the lay of the land. It's not a big facility here, but there's plenty ample to go to, and there's lots of food places that are walkable distance if you don't bring your own lunch to go get lunch. That's it.
Cool,
Thank
great.
you.
Thank you, Lauren. Good overview. So much ahead of you. So many words she was using, ecosystem services and stuff like that. We're gonna talk about all those things and define them and give you more comfort as you're moving forward. I want to take a Mother Nature break right here, but I want to say one thing and make sure this gets on the tape before we take a pause. Be sure to read the syllabus. I take great pains to show you what the important dates are. They're not the same project due dates that are on the master calendar. I apologize, we didn't coordinate that, but these are the dates that you will be responsible for, okay? And in this class, you do your first assignment, we post it on Blackboard, you read at least 2 of your fellow students' papers, comment on those, and we'll talk about how that process works. But all those due dates are on here. And I also explain the assignments in great detail. So let's go ahead and take a Mother Nature break, and we'll get some more bagelage and go from there.